welcome to another episode of War Hero to Superhero, helping military veterans, first responders transform their lives from the prayer room to the boardroom. As usual, when we bring in our superheroes to war heroes to superheroes, we get into the superhero battle room. We go over and press buttons that we shouldn't press, but we hope to go over and give you transformation as the buttons we press. Today, we are with Matthew Phillip. He is a man who has served his country and now empowers, forgot the S, it's okay, foreign affairs for our nation. As usual, we try to have you guess the branch. If he gives it up, it's his choice, but we'll see on how secret squirrel he is when he's talking to us. Matthew, do I have you on the stage?
Yes, you do. Thank you.
Awesome. So let's go jump into our first question we always ask is, what inspired you to serve, to join the military?
Yes, so that's a great question. So just a quick background about myself. My family immigrated from the Philippines, and I was born here in the United States in California. So after just being here, learning about the growing up in the country in California, and just in general, there's a lot of history of the military from the Philippines and the United States military in the Philippines throughout the world, especially of course the American Filipino wars, the World War II, and because World War II was a big history in the Philippines when it came. You got Corregidor, you got the Bataan Death March. So it was just something I saw when I was growing up here in the United States, being from a family of immigrants, American citizen, just wanting to give back to the United States in a way to that really inspired me to serve in the military.
Wow. So in a sense, you came to this country culture shock, because I go to a Filipino church now. It's like 60% Filipino and then mix of the rest. So you moved from the Philippines to California, had to learn that culture, and now decided to go over, and after all the history, the rich American Filipino history with wars and everything else, decided to go over and serve. Woo, man, I barely could go over and handle just going across the street sometimes, and you moved across the pond, to say the least, and then decided to go over and serve our great United States service.
And I do want to ask too, just my family moved from the Philippines. My brother did. I was born in the United States, so I probably misspoke about that one. But it was just growing up in California, but with a family from that were immigrants, that really inspired me. And being that born in California, being that American born or Filipino, being that American born here in the United States with family from the Philippines, it's just amazing how much you want to give back.
And that's really cool to go over and hear. So when did you leave the military, and how long did you go over and serve?
So I retired around end of July of 2021. So I joined in 2001, in July of 2001, and this was definitely before September 11th. So before I joined, I had to get my parents to sign the paperwork, because they're divorced. So they had to, the recruiter had to go to my parents in different places, and I kind of had to tell them, hey, there was nothing going on at the time. Going to boot camp, I'm going to enjoy getting that training, and it's just something that was just something completely different. But yeah, I did 20 years from 2001 to 2021.
That is a long time to go over and serve. I'm currently roughly 24 years, but you did active duty. I did 12 years active, and I've done 12 years reserve. So that is huge. I want to thank you for going over and doing that, because it's hard each and every time. And we re-sign the paperwork. We're always at a precipice. We're like, do I stay or do I go? And even when you go do the enlistment, you might feel really like, oh, awesome and everything else. And then you realize the next day, you're like, what did I sign up for again? In that particular regard. So how did that transition go? It was 2021. It was around COVID time. I mean, everything must have been crazy and everything else. Was it a good transition, a bad transition? Can you expand on it?
Yeah. So it was good and bad at the same time, because during 2020 or 2019 to 2020, I still wanted to stay in a little bit longer, but I just couldn't get the next rank where I wanted to get that let me stay in a little bit longer. So in 2020, I decided this was I had to make a decision, because I had to retire. So I had to do the transitional classes And like you said, unfortunately, it was during the COVID time frame where we had, a lot of the traditional classes were online or preparing to move online. Like one I did was on WebEx instead of in person. So that was just, and then at the time, nobody really knew how this stuff would work or how things would be, especially like because the training classes when we got out was just in depth. They give you a lot of work, a lot of paperwork. They do their best to transition you out. So yeah, it was just having that the time frame of in 2020, and then just doing the transitional classes there, and then getting out in 2021. It was just a weird time frame, but it definitely forced you to find different organizations or other companies or other people to point you in the right direction. So it was definitely good and bad for my transition of that. I was during the COVID time frame because I had to take these classes online that you normally do in a week or two. And then, but it also made me force myself to find other organizations to put myself out there and get better.
Yeah, I know. I was like, I haven't gotten out yet, but I was like, I remember in March of that time of 2021, they're like, hey, you need to go to your garage and work. What do you mean go to my garage and work? I'm in a 3,000-foot siphon lock door behind nobody, and I got teams, I got all these things. When I'm interacting with the security forces on the base, I'm literally showing my ID with distance with a mask, and they made me come home to my garage, and I had 4 kids while still trying to do work and classes and everything else. So man, getting out, it must have been like a brain fog in a sense, because they tend to, at least from my observations, we increased the requirements because we weren't face to face. Before, you'd be listening to the lecture and you'd be like, and then you go over and you'd forget most of it. And now you're like quizzes and essays and going over, and then you're like slide after slide after slide, or video after video after video. So it must have been really mentally daunting. And then you're not really seeing anybody at the same time.
No, that's correct. It's WebEx. They got the slides on there. You got the workbook they give you, but you have nobody around you to talk to. But you can maybe do a side chat. But this was, like I said, everybody was still trying to figure things out. WebEx is a good platform, but not the best one when you're trying to transition out.
Yeah, and before we get into your next part of your transition, we're going to transition to some sponsor breaks.
You have served. No matter if it was in the military or civilian service, you deserve to live good. Live good in health. Live good in wealth. Live good in so much more. At Live Good, the global wholesale buyer club, we empower you to take your mission to the next level. Are you ready to live good? We all struggle in life. No matter the barriers, we do not need to stay there. Each day is an opportunity to step into better health. Each day is an opportunity to step into wealth. Each day is an opportunity to step into dreams. Live Good, the Global Wholesale Buyers Club, empowers all these steps and more. Ready to be empowered? Grab the link to learn more.
Welcome back. We're going to bring Matthew back on the stage. He was last talking about the WebEx transformation transition when he was getting out of service. So we're going to bring Matthew back on the stage and pivot our conversation a bit. Beautiful word for the military. I love it personally. You go over and you literally change direction. What made you pivot to serve your current community? If you go look at your LinkedIn bio, I wouldn't have thought you were military. I thought you were state government. I thought, like, wow, this guy's like a dignitary in a sense when I first met you, and like so pronounced and professional. What made you go over and go from military soldier, or whatever branch you want to reveal, if not to going over to your current community? Because when I think of you, I think of LinkedIn. I never think of Facebook. And like, even when I tried to find you on Facebook, I'm like, he has a Facebook profile. Interesting.
Yeah, so just what made me pivot was that when I was getting out, it was like I said earlier, it was during the 2020 time frame. So my whole goal before I was going to get out of the military was just own a business and do that stuff where I can help out in foreign affairs or something, to the logistical admin and operational stuff. But it was just what happened during the COVID time frame where I saw a lot of different things, made me want to reach out, learn about different political things or different military, or understand what the veteran community goes through, because I didn't really have a good idea of what it was, because even though I was active duty, and I did have, I was administrator by trade, and I had to work a lot of the programs for the transitional classes. I didn't really pay attention to much of that when I look back into my career. It was just now I saw when I was getting out, it's just exactly what people were going through, because you only get 2 weeks, when you 2 weeks or a week when you leave the military, but you get what, almost 3 to 6 months of joining the military. But what that made me pivot is that situations where I saw I had to find other organizations to help me out by going through their classes. I've volunteered a lot when I was in, and I was served constantly overseas, almost 10 years, where I started off in California, went to Bahrain, Germany, Burkina Faso, and North Carolina, the Pentagon, and then Virginia. So, but I served all over these places, saw many different things, and it just made me want to reach out, and continue to serve. Where after I got out, I was able to do a congressional fellowship on the Hill. It was a Hill that's did it with the United States House of Representatives, became a government contractor, doing senior event program planning for the Ted Stevens Center for Arctic Security Studies in Washington D.C., and then where I'm currently at as a foreign affairs officer with the Department of State. But and then just continuing to volunteer with many different organizations in the veterans space, the Asian community, and then just many other things as well in the military, and just continuing to give back as much as I can. So that's just why I pivoted, but it's just continuing to do that.
I think we need to take a time and a moment to go over and process what you just said, because I don't think we do that as a lot as veterans. We don't realize how many places we've been, how many jobs we've done, how many people we impacted, and even sometimes the opportunities that we have gotten out, or we don't know how to leverage those opportunities. Because I'm going to guess officer, just for like the type of language going out there and everything else. But I think of our enlisted folks, because I'm enlisted, and a lot of times we don't know what we really go over and do, and we really don't have that mentorship in that particular regard. But it's just that moment of how many things we've done, and we need to take those moments to have those stories out there to figure out, so we can't pivot, because this is what this whole show is about, is the transformation from war hero to superhero. So it's very empowering to hear what you've done, but I also want to remember that us as in general, that if we haven't made that pivot and transformation, we need to take that time and moment to visit our past and what we've done. Look at our enlisted or officer reports, going over and looking at our orders, going over and looking at that time reflection, even talking to a civilian about it. They're usually amazed on what we've done. So that's how we can go over and pivot, but we need to go over and remember that. So I thought it was very just to take another moment to, you've done a lot. And I'm like, that's a lot of places to go. I've done 24 years and I've been in a lot of quote unquote places, but not as impactful. And I'm not saying I didn't impact people. I'm just saying, when I think of what you were talking about, like, you've impacted the world in a sense, in that particular, and we need to go over and remember that. So I want to thank you for going over and sharing, and also remind our audience that we need to take a moment sometimes to rest in what we did. So if you're not at that pivot point, the audience that's listening, to go over and take that moment to listen, reflect, write down, maybe have a mentor to go and go with you. And that's going to help you find and help you serve your current community. So that is awesome. So did you have, just a side question, was there a long gap between from when you got out of service until you had employment in your next mission?
No, it wasn't definitely not that long, but you're right though about looking back at your past, because when I was in California, I went to Iraq, and then it was just, and I like how you said, I sounded like a officer was just something that I wanted to do, but I retired as enlisted, which is definitely great. But yeah, but it was definitely not that long. I went from July, did my retirement ceremony in July, the 29th, a Friday, and then immediately went to DC for the Helvets program as of August 1st. Didn't really get my fellowship on the Hill maybe about till 2 months later. But when I finishing off that fellowship, immediately was able to transition into the contracting position, where while I was in that contracting position, I was able to apply for State Department. So I kind of luckily was able to move in from one next to another, and didn't really have that small little gap. But it was just more preparing what what made me continue was I kept preparing for the next. I still, even when I got the foreign affairs position, I kept preparing for the next. I will just continuing to move on, continuing to fix my resume, take part of different organizations or companies to help out or try to get out there. And this is stuff is still, putting myself out there is still somewhat new. If you could probably know me or know who I am, I'm not really one of those that like to post a lot or like to do to put myself out there, but I will do it just to get better at it and also continue to help out.
Yeah, I think that's probably the greatest wisdom in that particular bunch of sentences while my mind is like floating right now. But to go over and say, prepare for the next. I think sometimes we get so stuck in the here and now. And the here and now is great. When I'm present with somebody and going over and interacting with them or ministering to them or going over and serving them, that's one thing. But our jobs are only a moment. We enlisted or we commissioned, we did 4 years, we've done 30 years or something in between in that particular guard. We're only there for a moment. So we need to be looking for our, in a sense, next mission. So I think that was probably very wise if you start thinking of that early on in your career, is to go over and like, how do I leverage today for the future for tomorrow? If we just get caught up in today and today's mission and we serve, we can be the greatest person on the performance reports. We can get the decorations, we can have the medals and ribbons and everything else. But if we don't start preparing for the next mission, then if we don't even look at it and we just get into it, that's what happens. I think a lot of us get into taps. We're thinking the immediate. And then like Chris Hoffman says, he goes over and he's like, those first 3 to 6 months, within almost 3 years, you're going to pivot. You're not going to think you're going to be where you're at and those type of things. So you should be looking at like, what is my next overall mission that I want? And what do I need to do to prepare? I mean, I've taken some crazy leaps because I had to. Now I'm looking at leaps that do I want to? I think that's what we need to look at too, is do we want to? So I think that was very wise of what you've gone over and did in that particular regard, because I didn't think that at all. When I got out in 2012 of active duty, I'm thinking, all right, I want to do marriage ministry. I moved all the way down to Arkansas. I didn't look at it as it could fail. I didn't look at it like, how long is a step going to be or anything else. I got so caught up in there. And then when I ran out of money, resources, and time, I put myself in a heyday for the next 7 years. And thinking your next mission would have been something that I could have needed in my head. I wish you would have known me in 2012. I'm like, hey, you need to think of your next mission. Like, what? I'm in mental health. I'm going to be in it forever. I didn't know my mental health job was literally going to have me and force me to leave active duty. So I think that was very powerful to go over and say.
Thank you.
Now, talking about going over and tough times and everything else, all the places you went, all the jobs you do, you're working in the Department of State, which I'm assuming is in DC, correct? Like you're in the bubble. So I'm like, there's got to be pressure. There's got to be tough times. Because if there's not, man, I'm like, then I want to go live in DC if it's like sunshine and rainbows. So what's your secret fuel when that pressure and tough times comes, which could be tomorrow?
Yeah, it's you're right though. When living here in DC or those different foreign countries or different states that that I lived through, it's just the secret fuel when the pressure and times come is that I continue to learn to, of course, remain calm, but also collective in what I'm doing, but also being able to just push forward as much as you can, as best as you can, because sometimes you're not able to do that. But I do like to go running, exercising, listen to music, just get out, walk for a little bit, or just continuing to volunteer with many different organizations. But one things I do the most is just continue to remain calm and collected, and also just find the best procedures possible and utilize the best resources to move forward and get the job done. Because all I could say in a lot of places I've been, just had to just have that flexibility and understanding that, hey, things are going to happen regardless of what you do. But as long as you have a plan, you get the right procedures, you put everything together, and that's what's going to get everything done. But I'd say personally, I like to go running, exercising, watch movies, television shows, go hang out with friends or whatever. But work-wise, professionally, just have that flexibility, understanding that, hey, this is what's going to happen, just and have those tools and procedures as like most, project managers or event planners or whatever will have to get everything done. But the flexibility and understanding is key.
I think that's huge in that particular regard. It must be, if you're working in DC, tons of offices, tons of people. I don't think we think about work as a battle space. And that's why I named the show War Hero to Superhero, talking from the prayer room to the boardroom in that particular regard, because the only place that's safe in my eyes is in the prayer room of my God and in the bedroom of my spouse. My living room is a mini battlefield, kids, everything else, helping them grow and everything else. And when we go to the workspace, either the conference room, the war room, the boardroom, whatever it is, we're out into chaos. So if you don't have that mindset of being calm and then knowing what to go over and do, I think that's why we as veterans go out there and we don't realize that's a battle space. We're not trying to think PTSD, war, and nukes and everywhere. But when we went over and deployed, we got pre-briefed. When you went over and overseas, you knew what you're walking into. When I went to Korea, I knew what green bean and brown bean and all these other types of things. And they're thinking like Faust is going to get drunk. I'm like, Faust is never going to get drunk. But, in that particular regard, I knew what I was walking into in that battlefield. But when we're sometimes in the States or sometimes in our comfortable job in our workspace, our job is to bring order to chaos. So we need to be prepared to be calm, like you said, in that particular space. And then also knowing that being flexible, like I had 3 emails this week I thought were going to go over and destroy me, and had to go over and wrestle with those things. I'm like, it's a freaking digital data with like words in there. And I'm like, really? And it becomes chaos, but learning to be calm because I can't control those things coming in. And then I need to go over and to say, how can I be flexible? How can I go leverage? How can I connect to the right people? So I think you synergistically tied that all together. But yeah, being calm, I think that's going to be what I'm going to take for me, because me not calm, me usually just rant. So I'm usually pretty bold in what I go over and say. So yeah, thinking being calm might get some more kudo points. So lastly, and to close out the show, is 3 superhero tactics. So either thinking of your active duty time or going over and thinking your job in foreign affairs or like DC, or maybe working with clients, as we'll talk about your website and final things at the end. What would you give either your younger self or your clients to take that survival mentality that they came in with and to go into a thriving mentality that you want them to walk out with?
Yeah. So let's say the 3 superhero tactics, as we discussed throughout here, is just have that superhero mentality to get the job done. That's definitely important, is to be able to get everything done from point A to point B in a manner that will just complete it. Right. That's the best thing you can do, is just get everything done in the best possible way. Second one is, as I always told myself, and I'm trying to and getting better at it, is sometimes is just to remain calm and cool, calm, cool, collective, where situations are sometimes definitely out of your control. And the way to do it is just remain calm and collected, where you can get things done where it just happens. Because I know sometimes if you're angry, or if you're not collected and you're just all over the place, sometimes it just doesn't really help the situation. Other people will pick up on that and just go on it. But if you're cool, calm, collected, and you show them that, hey, this is the path forward, they will understand that. Last one is flexible. Be flexible in a sense. Not maybe not like from Mr. Fantastic, but I'm just saying, just be flexible in the situations. You never know what's going to be. Just never know what's going to happen. You just never know who is going to be there, what you're going to run into. As long as you're flexible in the situation and you know how to navigate it, where you may not have everything, the budget may not be there, or something, or you're not really sure what's going on. Just be flexible to figure out, because not all the time, just not all the time, we run into situations where we're transitioning out during a middle of a pandemic, but you just definitely scared a lot of people and definitely push people in different directions, which I understand, and it's just what pushed me forward where I wanted to be. But I'd say that those 3 things just, or what kind of helped me get in the right area.
I thought of every analogy. I thought of Gumby. I thought of Mrs. Incredible when you say be flexible. I thought of the Mr. Fantastic and everything else. I think that's huge for us to go understand, is the flexibility and being calm and everything else, and then going over and just knowing that we have to adjust and pivot. So Matthew, I want to thank you for going over and joining us. I'm going to give you the floor one last time. If you want to tell people about your website, what you go over and do for clients, if you want to close us out on a quote, that's totally fine. But once you give 2 seconds of pause, we go to credits. So the floor is yours.
Yeah. So, my website, Matthew Philippou, is just, I put together, it was just to get myself where I needed to be, but it's just understanding of who I am in a platform other than the social medias, but it's just something I'm working together. But in terms of what I currently do now, other than just trying to do that work, is, I currently volunteer and support many different organizations, such as, Vets to Industry. I'm their volunteer events director. We do a lot of events where we support veterans in different, in resources and other places, but also I volunteer was my Marine Corps, I gave it up, but my Marine Corps' Asian Pacific American Professionals, the Leader Transition Institute, Wounded Warrior Project, Travis Manning Foundation, the Key Community, Act Now Education, OCADC, Veterans at State, and the Veteran Support Program at the Department of State. The reason I say all this and what I do is I just continuing to give back to the veterans and to Asian culture, but also just to volunteer, but also support people, because I know a lot of times there are so many different organizations, so many different platforms out there that you need places to find them. And I know that's why I enjoyed working with Vets to Industry, going to these places such as the Military Influencer Conferences, or other organizations that give us like this, give us the platform like this one, and then just continuing to give back and learn that, just be flexible, have an understanding of what you're going through, and also just, be aware of what's going on, and just get better at it. Because like, if you see me earlier, doing stuff like this is not something I would be used to. And I just want to say, just give an understanding, be kind with yourself, just have that flexibility, just have a plan in place from point A to point B, just have those procedures, have the styles you need, and that will help you out. And so I want to say thank you very much.